Good morning, everybody. I'm going to call this meeting to order. We've got quorum. I just want to, before we start, draw everybody's attention to the screen in the back of the room where you can follow the agenda. And if you're listening at home, you can also go to www.toronto.ca/council if you want to follow the proceedings of this committee at home or in your workplace. And saying that, are there any declarations of conflict of interest? Seeing none, can I have somebody, a motion to move the minutes of the September 17th meeting? Councillor Grimes, all in favor? I don't think we have this deputation list, or is there one on? Sorry, we have one deputation on number 5. Mr. George Rusty. Okay, saying that, item number 1, outstanding payment in lieu of taxes and property tax amounts. Timed item? Sorry, Councillor Grimes is moving.
Record that. Can I be recorded in negative?
Sorry, Councillor McConnell, you want to hold it? Okay, Council. Okay.
Oh, no, it's not on that.
Okay, so all in favor with Councillor Ford being recorded in negative? Recorded vote, okay. All in favor of number 1? Councillor McConnell, Councillor Nunziata, Councillor Davis, we're voting on item number 1. Sorry? You want to hold it? Okay, so Councillor Davis is holding the first one. Number 2, largest property tax debtors with tax arrears greater than $500,000. Councillor McConnell is holding number 2. Number 3, options to provide utility bills on monthly billing cycle.
I'd like to hold that. Sorry.
Councillor Ford wants to hold that.
Yeah.
Number 4, the Corporation of the City of York Employee Pension Plan. Councillor Grimes is moving receipt. All in favor? Carried. We have a deputation on number 5. And I have a motion. I'm going to move on number 5 as well. Number 6, transfer of title ownership in 679 Queens Quay West from the City of Toronto to Toronto Community Housing Corporation. Councillor Davis is moving adoption. All in favor? Carried. Number 7, contract with Moore Canada Corporation for the provision of renewal forms and parking permits.
Hold on. Sorry, I didn't see this. I have a
Conflict?
yeah.
Okay, so Councillor Ford is declaring a conflict on GM 7.7 contract with Moore Canada Corporation for the provision of renewal forms and parking permits. So, sorry, Councillor Ford, I need the nature of the interest.
DECO, our family business, does forms and tickets and all different printing similar to Moore Canada.
Okay, all right. Does anybody want to hold this? So, Councillor Ford, I just need you to step away from the desk while we vote. All in favor, number 7? Carried. Okay, Councillor Ford, you can come back. Number 7, provision of proprietary parts and services from the Zamboni Company Limited. Councillor Grimes.
Yeah,
There's not a big. All in favor? Carried. Number 9, contract with York University for the provision of rapid risk factor surveillance system partnership services.
I remember.
Recommendation. Carried. Number 10, contract awarded by the bid committee during the 2015 summer recess period. Councillor Grimes is moving receipt. All in favor? Carried. Number 11, update on Toronto Hydro's agreement with 311 Toronto for outage emergencies.
I'd like to hold this. I think Councillor Fletcher is interested in
Okay. And I have a motion to move on this one as well.
Mr. Chair, if you have a motion on Old City Hall, I wonder if you could just let us know what it is, or distribute it in advance, because I think all of us have ideas about what we want to do there.
Sure.
So it would give us some idea where you're headed.
Yep. Just want to put it on the screen. So where my head is, yep.
It's on the screen too.
So it's basically to delete recommendation 4 and 5, which talks about removing the atrium space and looking at doing a design competition.
We will have to have some discussion.
Yep, that's where my head is.
Okay.
Well, design competition and report back on use. Yes. Yep, that's good. I'm happy to take amendments. Yes. Yep. We can tweak the wording. Okay, and so we are on to number 5. So we have a deputation on this item, Old City Hall, future tenant options, Mr. George Rusty. Morning, Mr. Rusty. How are you doing today? You have 5 minutes to depute to the committee. You've been here before, so
I have.
you know the process. So if your mic's got a yellow button, when it's lit up, your mic is on. You have 5 minutes to start whenever you're ready.
Shall I sit at the mic, Mr. Chair? Okay.
Yes.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'm here before your committee as a private citizen, as a longtime member and chair of the Toronto Historical Board, and as chair of the former Civic Museum Task Force, which reported to the Council of the former City of Toronto in 1986. So I've been involved with the city and with the heritage of the city for a great number of years. I'm not addressing today the specific recommendations in the report before you. I do welcome the proposed amendment to remove number 4, dealing with the exclusive reservation on the courtyard area for the future of the Toronto Museum project. In 1986, my task force, which I chaired, recommended to the City Council that it proceed with the consideration of plans for a museum of the City of Toronto, which I believe to be a matter of very high priority and which the city should have. At the time of the task force consideration, we received a number of deputations and reports from consultants and comments from members of the public. And I think it's fair to say that there was an overwhelming direction among those that the old City Hall of Toronto be restored, as it now basically has been, and that it be used as a museum for the City of Toronto. It would put the entire building in availability to the public. It would highlight our most important heritage building, at least in my opinion, it's our most important heritage building, and it would provide a lasting means by which the city could utilize its large number of historical resources and information and photographic exhibits and other means of publicizing the history of the city. And it would allow the public to attend, to see the building, and to participate in the development of the museum. My simple request today is that the committee not foreclose the possibility of the old City Hall being used as a museum of Toronto. In my submission, a retail mall would be an entirely inappropriate use for that building. I can see a place for instance, historical souvenir shop or something like that, but a retail mall, in my submission, is out of the question. The building, the city should celebrate that building, should make it available to the public, and should create a museum of the City of Toronto. And those are my submissions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Rusty. Questions from outside the committee? Councillor Matlow? Any? No? Okay. I saw Councillor McConnell and then Councillor Ford.
Thank you, Mr. Rusty. Thank you very much. Do you, or have you submitted the task force report that came forward with all of the analysis and so on? Do you, was that submitted to council? Like, do we have it in our possession, or do you have it in your possession so that we could kind of use it again as a study to move forward?
Through you, Mr. Chair, first of all, I haven't been able to ascertain exactly what was the disposition of the task force report.
Okay.
We submitted it to the Toronto Historical Board, and I haven't yet found records as to what the THB did with it. However, I do have a copy of it with me today,
Great.
and I would be very happy to share it with the city and urge its consideration.
Okay, so perhaps you could submit that and we could make copies of it and then give it back to you, because I know that it's an important document for you as well. So the task force, could you give us a flavor of both who was on the task force? I know that the general direction coming out was around the museum, because we'd also looked at some other places, and this, I think, came down. So who are the types of people or the names of people that were on that task force?
For you, Mr. Chair, I chaired the task force. Members of the task force included Desmond Conacher, longtime member of the Architectural Conservancy of Ontario, His Worship Mayor Art Eggleton, Michael Filey, Roy Henderson, the city clerk at the time, Councillor Ann Johnston, Stephen McLaughlin, and William Withrow. I think it was an excellent group of long-term Torontonians, and we produced a fairly lengthy report.
Yes?
Once again, the city at that time had not decided that it was going to have a Museum of Toronto task force, and consequently it was difficult for us to say, well, the museum should be in the old City Hall.
Right.
However, we did recommend that the city proceed with developing plans for a Museum of Toronto, that it would be an important city institution, and certainly the feeling amongst members, most of the members of the task force, was that the old City Hall was the ideal location.
Right. Most recently, when was that done? I'm sorry.
1986.
Yes, so most recently, so that was 1986, which was a third task force. And then most recently, we had a report from Culture and Heritage that also suggested that this should be the next use now that the courts were starting to go. And I think that at that time, there was a sense that we could also use it as a gathering place for tourism, for tourists, for information, for all of that kind, as a magnet to people who were both visiting and who were visitors, as well as people who were from Toronto. Isn't that correct?
Yes, Mr. Chair. It is important in my submission, and I believe the task force believed as well, that the City Hall, the old City Hall, be available for public use, and that it serve a number of means of communicating to the public and allowing the public to communicate to the city. And there's so much of the history of Toronto to celebrate, and much of it has never been seen
Right.
or understood. So it would
For a
have
long
that.
time, unless you were a criminal, I guess. So you also, not only are you very well versed in heritage, but also in archival materials that we have here. Would you say that the art collections, the artifacts, the archival things that we have in the archives is sufficient to be able to animate all of the spaces that are there?
Well, we have a wealth of resources in the city archives. There's no
Yes.
question about that. But I think it would also be desirable to seek ideas from the public as to how the building might be used, and the types of displays and information that they might want to see made available in it.
And my last question to you is really, as a historian, if I could put the lawyer, the archivist, the photographer, and now the historian.
Last question, Councillor?
Yes, it is my last question. This is one of the most historical buildings that are left in our city. Would you see certainly some concerns about even being able to implement the retailing of that kind of space in terms of the inside glass, the windows, all of those sorts of things that are there? How much would that limit the use of this as a mall, if I could put it that way?
Well, first of all, I do believe that it's the most important heritage building in the city and one of the most important heritage buildings in Canada. It's also by a Toronto architect, Edward J. Lennox, who the stained glass windows, for instance, by McCausland are unique and of high importance. I think it would take very deliberate work to ensure that any new uses, first of all, be consistent with the purpose and background of the building itself, but secondly, of course, respect and maintain physically the resources of the old City Hall. For instance, the lobby of the old City Hall, which has now the original two grotesques which stood at the bottom of the stairs, which I brought back to the old City Hall from a flea market in Stratford. But
Really?
Yes. Yes, I found them there, and I bought them and brought them back. They're now in plexiglass boxes at the bottom of the stairs, which is approximately their original location. But no, I think a lot of care would have to be taken to make sure that no new uses of any kind, especially retail uses, react negatively on the physical features of the city itself, of the City Hall itself.
Great.
Thank you, Councillor McConnell. Councillor Ford, I saw your hand.
Mr. Chair. Sir, do you know how many square feet we're talking for Old City Hall? You're saying you want to keep it and turn it into a museum. How many, do you have the total number of square feet?
To you, Mr. Chair, I believe that information is in the task force report, and I'll try to find it. And if it is in the task force report, I'll highlight it when I give it to the clerk. But if not, I'll be happy to find out and provide that to the committee.
Okay, as you know, we spent millions of dollars restoring Old City Hall.
Yes.
And there's still much more work to be done, as you know, inside the courtrooms, and that it's pretty rough looking, to say the least. I know you disagree with this, but how much do you think you could get on the market if you sold?
Aside from the frightening implication of selling the old City Hall, you may remember we almost lost it to the Eaton Centre, when the Eaton Centre wanted to take it over and demolish it and then possibly leave just the tower standing.
But in the open market
It's a
right
very
now,
it would be a very expensive property.
it'd be over 200 million, at least 300 million.
I'm afraid I'm not an expert in property values, and I have no idea. It would be a very, very, very expensive piece of property.
And obviously, there's, it's been designated heritage, so whoever would get it would have some restraints, and there's some restrictive covenants, from what I understand, on that building. When you say open it up to a museum, and I love the idea of a museum, I just don't know if we want to have one of the best buildings in Toronto as a museum. Wouldn't you maybe think of another less expensive building, maybe?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I can only say that I believe it would be the best building for a Museum of Toronto, and that the City of Toronto should have a Museum of Toronto. Well, whether there may be lesser buildings which would also serve the purpose, I'm not in a position to judge.
Then this is my next question. How big of a museum would you be looking at? Because a museum the size of Old City Hall, it's massive. You've got so many levels, would you have would you have some sort of combination? Would there be a restaurant in a museum, or would there be, what do you imagine? What do you vision?
Well, through you, Mr. Chair, first of all, what I'm suggesting is that there be a feasibility study done on the use of Old City Hall as a civic museum. Certainly, I would welcome in such a study uses which would draw members of the public in, which would provide information, which would provide meeting places, and which would display the building itself. But really, once again, it would be the start of the process at this point. The building is there, the city has restored it, the courts will be moving out of it, which I think is a very good thing. And the thing is, we'll have a tabula rasa in which the city can then study how it wants to use the Old City Hall in the interest of the public.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Any more questions for the deputant? Seeing none. Thank you very much, Mr. Rustay, for coming in this morning. Appreciate your
Mr.
perspective.
Chair. Thank you, members.
Questions of staff? Nope. Does anybody have any questions of staff?
Well, yeah, I guess.
Councillor Ford?
Just following up on my last question to the deputant. Where's real estate? Rough numbers, and I'm not saying I agree with this, but keep all your options open. How much do you think this would go for on the market?
Well, we've worked with Avis and Young to look at the possibilities because it is a unique building. I don't think the number is as high as what you're talking about. We think that the cash flow from any commercial type of entity would be upwards of $75 million.
That's it?
That's it. Because
Why
there's a
is it
lot
so
of
low?
renovation inside that would have to happen to the building.
Can I just stop you there? How many square feet is that building?
It's 164,000 approximately rentable square feet.
When you say rentable floor space?
That's the floor space we
Right.
could rent. There's 186,000 square feet of maintainable area.
Right. And you're thinking 164,000, that's pretty well the building you're saying,
Yes.
would sell for 75 million approximately right now.
That's just from the consulting work that we've done with Avis and Young.
Let's take it to the next step. With obviously it being preserved under the heritage and the restrictions that there are on that building, what could be done to it? Could you demolish it? Obviously, you couldn't. You'd have to hold on to some of the exterior. I'm not quite sure what's been designated as heritage there. Could you do some interior alterations?
I think demolishing is completely out. The whole building is heritage.
Okay.
What you would have to do.
Sorry, when you say the whole building, inside, outside, like everything is heritage?
Yes.
So you really couldn't move a door or a wall to open
No,
up?
you can in consultation with the heritage, per the heritage easement.
You look at, yeah, it has to be the same sort of,
It's like Union Station, whereby we had to consult every step of the way to make changes to any of the structure. So it can be done. It is expensive.
how much would it cost to restore, I'm just getting rough numbers. How much would it cost to restore Old City Hall to Class A museum? Going to be hard. If you can't answer the question, I'm just looking for ballpark numbers.
Because we haven't been in to analyze how the museum would be set up. It's my understanding that the request for the museum was only for 30,000 square feet. That's why we're here looking at potential possibilities for the rest of the
I
building.
saw. Exactly. What else do we do if we have a quarter of it being, I'm just using that number, a quarter of it, the 126, what would we be doing with the other 3/4 of it?
Well, there's options to have, I'll say, learning and technology in there, post-secondary educational uses, financial uses. You can go specialty retail. Everyone is calling it a mall, I hear in the newspaper and that, but I would call it specialty retail that would complement whatever the main use of the building potentially is. You can obviously have arts and culture, a museum of Toronto, a music venue, or potentially fashion-related uses in the building.
Let me go back to your music venue. How could you use that as a music venue?
In terms of, when I say music venue, it'd be functions that support the music industry. It doesn't mean necessarily that there's
concert in it.
concerts or whatever, but it could be. If you could picture the interior courtyard covered with a glass dome, whereby people are utilizing the interior of that space as a wide-open
Right.
piazza, if you want to call it.
Right. How big's that build? How many acres is that building? Must be about 2 acres.
I actually don't have the site size, so I would,
All right, I just-
just from what I know, I would say it's approximately 2. I think you're correct.
I heard that too. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Ford. Other questions of staff? Councillor McConnell? Councillor Davis?
In your report, you say that you I lost it. The page that actually, oh, yes, that you've consulted with real estate services and other stakeholders. What other stakeholders were consulted?
In terms of, our consultant has been out to the marketplace to try to understand what types of parties might be interested in the building. So it was a very precursor type of look at potential users that might want to have access to the building.
But that, so
Or
that
the
didn't
attendant.
include any public consultation or
No,
hearing from
no.
our communities, what they would like to see?
No, there was not.
Okay, so if we were to ask you to go away and actually do some public consultation and to hear back, we have heard loud and clear that a museum, either a Toronto museum or Toronto and a music museum, are uses that people think are appropriate. Could you, and there seems to be as well a desire to have a design process that is fulsome and engaging as well. So if we were to send you away to come back with having consulted and maybe undertaken a charrette, would that be something that you could do?
Yeah, yes, we could undertake a charrette. When you talk about the design work, I don't think we would be ready for design work until such time as we knew who might be interested in the building. So I think it's a combination of the public
Right.
interest.
What I'm asking is, could you come back with a proposed design process
Yes,
after you've done, first we have to determine what the use is.
that's
And then we have to decide how we're going to design the building for those uses.
right.
So is it reasonable to go away, do some consultation that engages the public and the broader community and councillors and others, and come back with the outcome of those consultations on use with a proposed design process?
Yes, I can do that.
The other thing I wondered about was, and maybe the chair was going to ask this, about the ongoing use by the provincial government. So are they on schedule to move out as per the original plan?
So they've indicated to us that they want to build a new courthouse behind City Hall on Chestnut Street.
Right.
So they've said that it will take them 8 years to build it. And I didn't want to tie up Old City Hall for another total of 8 years, because a lot can change in that 8 years. So all the work that we would be doing now may change because of that time period that goes by. So what I want to make sure of is that we're giving the province enough time to build their new headquarters.
So you're saying 5 years?
Plus, I indicated to them that I would give them 2 one-year periods for force majeure. If there's a strike or something stops them from actually moving into their building, then we would allow them an extra 2 years.
And how will we know if they've taken the decision? Have they actually taken the decision and put it in the budget? We know that they're moving? Like, is there,
They've
Public
indicated
evidence
to
of
us,
it?
yes, they have.
Yeah, through you,
no, I
Madam-
know they're saying they're building a building. They've said it.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. It was announced in the 2014 budget, and IO has already started their process to build the new, what's called a super courthouse.
Right. Okay, great. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So to staff, I'm going to suggest a further amendment to some of the discussions, and I'd like your comment on it. I think it's really important for us to update sort of what we heard from a task force in 1986 and what we heard about the museum, I think 4 years ago or 3 years ago. And so I would be suggesting, and I want your opinion on it, that we actually do a feasibility study in concert with ECDEV and Culture Division, with Heritage Toronto, and with Heritage Preservation, so that all the divisions are and agencies are kind of looking at this. And I think that that would take about 2 years for you to be with the public consultations. Does that make some sense to you?
Yes, absolutely.
Because I think that we might be able to marry 2 different museums that we've been looking at. One is music, and one is the Toronto Museum. And do you think that those 2 might be complementary to one another?
Yes, they could be complementary, yes.
Right, and that there would be opportunities for ancillary uses if, in fact, this became a big draw for Toronto tourism and for Toronto residents. Isn't that correct?
Yes, I would hope that ancillary uses would help offset costs that the city would have after this is
Yes.
changed into something new.
Yes. So in effect, we're looking at kind of replacing a revenue, if I could put it that way, of somewhere between $5-6 million a year. Isn't that correct?
Actually, the full cost to operate the building a year and minus the rent is over $10 million.
Okay, right, thank you. So that's the sort of numbers that we might be looking at, and I'm assuming that as part of that, we might look at, as we bring forward the revenue tools, hotel tax. If we collected a hotel tax, which would be a tourism tax, that could be a source of revenue, isn't that right?
It could be. I don't know how that would fit into my process. I would
Yeah.
like some suggestions from committee and council.
Well,
How?
yes, and I think, Mr. Casale, these things are kind of coming on parallel, but at some point they're going to cross over because we're going to know what revenue tools we're asking for and what revenue tools we're getting prior to the courts moving out anyway, right?
Yes, that's correct.
And we are making a kind of a historic decision as to what road to go down, but the actual costs of renovating and so on couldn't occur really until after the courts have left one way or another, isn't that
That's right. That's right.
So we have some breathing room around this.
Yes, I would say we have a couple years of breathing room, but at that point in time, we should know exactly what we're doing.
What we're going to do.
Yes.
That's right. Okay. Great. Thank you very much. Those are my questions.
Councillor Grimes?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Joe, I see here the council decision of 2008 in May.
Yes.
Number 4, the city give notice to the province that we don't extend the lease beyond 2016. And then I see we go to the council decision 2011. Council directs you to go and enter into negotiations beyond 2016. And then today, number 3 is we're giving notice again. So is this council-led that we're having them exit the building, or is this the province on their own?
Yes, council gave me direction to look at commercial, institutional, and government uses for the building and to go out and find what,
But this is a council-led exit
This
to the
is-
we wanted the province out of there, is that correct?
this is my staff reaction to that direction.
So it's not the province wanted to leave, we directed them out in,
We did direct them out, but I'll say it's a combination of the two.
they wanted to
They
leave
they
too.
want a new courthouse.
Okay, those are my questions, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Grimes. I just had 2 quick questions on recommendation, sorry, Councillor Nunziata, sorry.
Okay, sorry. Just a question. Have we given any thought on some of our staff to be relocated at Old City Hall for office space?
The potential for staff would also be one of the options that we can look at, yeah. I would say that the space as it sits right now is not conducive, but it could be used for staff space.
Because just after amalgamation, before we moved from Metro Hall here, there was talk of us actually relocating to Old City Hall. I think at the time, correct?
Yes, there was talk at the time.
Yeah.
And in terms of that, I think the decision was made that it would be too complicated in the time frame that we had to deal with, because the province still needed the building for the courts, and it was still subject to the longer-term lease.
Okay. Now, prior to amalgamation, former municipalities, I know the city of York did, I don't know if Etobicoke or Scarborough, they had their own museums, correct?
I'm not familiar with that. I'm sorry.
Does
Each
anybody-
municipality had their own
Well,
municipal.
I know the city of York did, I don't know if North York did, or Etobicoke, you didn't have your museum? So some of the former municipalities that had their individual museums, I know the one in York, it used to be at the old Centennial Building at Eglinton and Keele, so now they've closed that up and they just have everything in storage. So if we look at relocating the Toronto Museum, is it possible that we can amalgamate all the individual museums that former municipalities had as well into one facility? I mean, that would make sense, correct?
So we would have consultations, yes, with every, I'll say with our cultural side of the city that has the information related to that. And we can come up with how much space do we need if we amalgamate all of it.
All of them, yeah. I'm not sure which I know we did. I don't know other municipalities, but maybe that's something we can look at as well. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nunziata. I think that's everybody on the committee. I just had a quick question in the report on page 5, in the comment section at the bottom, where it says the proposed rent of $41 represents a 1% decrease from the rent payable in 2016.
Yeah, that's the face value of the rent, yeah.
So we're going to charge the province less?
Actually, where we are picking it up is in, I believe it's the 3rd year. We're increasing the rents by 2% for 2 of the following years to try to pick that part of it up. The province presented us with their comparables for space around the city, and that's the negotiated rate that we could come to.
So without going into specific details, do they compare to our heritage buildings, I guess? Our other heritage buildings, since we're talking about a heritage
They
building?
compared to general office space in the area, which was running, I'll say, an average in around $25 an area, or dollars a square foot. So we obviously were pushing to not go that route.
Right. So
So what we were trying to do is basically stay the course until the province is able to move out.
we could charge them more than that. To me, $41
That's
seems
the
low.
best that staff could negotiate.
Sorry, Joe?
That's the best that staff could negotiate. If you direct us otherwise, we can approach the province.
Okay, all right, thank you. Speakers? Councillor Matlow?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I certainly support the direction that the chair has asked this committee to go in, along with the expected amendments from other councillors on the committee. I think it's important to both bring this question to the public about the best uses for Old City Hall, but also indicate to staff that a City of Toronto museum should be explored as part of the outcome of this process, given the fact that this has been a 40-year story since former Mayor David Crombie initiated this idea. And there have been so many near misses. We have hundreds of artifacts that are currently shuttered away from public view in warehouses that tell the story of this city. And we are one of the few cities in the world that don't actually have a city museum that celebrates and commemorates and shares the story of civic life over the past couple of centuries. And it's a shame. Montreal has one, Budapest, Chicago. I was just there a couple years ago. I fell in love with that city because I was able to learn its story, just like we fall in love with each other when we learn more about each other. And I think it's about time, it's a high time, in fact, that we finally do this in Toronto. Old City Hall not only was our seat of government for almost a century, but it's not only a heritage designated facility, it's also one of the few national historic sites in this city. And just the suggestion, with all due respect to the authors of the report, that we consider home decor and beauty products and private offices as such, is objectionable, I believe, to the majority of Torontonians who want to see the preponderance of this building be used for public use. In fact, the city's stated objective is to ensure that there is unfettered public access to Old City Hall. Now, I recognize that a city museum will not take up the entirety of the building, and that's why I think it is important to be creative, and that's why I like the chair's motion to go back to the public now and say, what do you want your Old City Hall to be? What do you want your City Hall to look like, and how would you like to be able to visit your Old City Hall? But to lose this opportunity once again would be such a shame. Toronto has such a shameful legacy when it comes to preserving our heritage. Not only have we allowed so many of our what should have been heritage buildings to be demolished in the false name of progress over many decades, unlike cities like Boston, where you not only see individual buildings, you see entire neighborhoods that have been preserved for decades, if not centuries. But when we have made efforts to preserve heritage, it's often been tokenism. It's been facadism, and I suggested that Old City Hall, if it were to become something like a shopping mall, it would be equivalent to performing heritage taxidermy. It's not real. It wouldn't be Old City Hall. It would be the shell of Old City Hall, but it wouldn't be Old City Hall within. It wouldn't be a public institution of any type or form. So I encourage you to ignore a recommendation 4, move forward with the chair's recommendations, but also ensure that we add in, through an amendment, that there be a genuine exploration, a real feasibility study about doing what council already decided to do, which is to create a City of Toronto museum at Old City Hall. Now, the only reason, when I was exploring the feasibility of creating a city museum at the North Campus, the precinct at Casa Loma, which is still not off the table, mind you, but it's not, as a destination, I admit that it's not as perfect as Old City Hall would be geographically in our city. But the biggest impediment that I learned that we had to create a museum at Old City Hall was the fact that we had courts there. We'd have prisoners walking through the atrium. It just didn't work functionally. But this won't be a problem once the courts are gone. So now we have an opportunity. We have a moment. We either seize it or we lose it. And the last thing I will say is that while I know this is a small and fringe minority who would suggest simply demolishing the building or selling it off to the private sector, please just drop that thought immediately. Allow that thought and that horrible suggestion to be demolished and put aside, but allow Old City Hall to flourish and be the vibrant heritage site that it should be. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Matlow. And Councillor Davis, did you want to speak?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There's a motion that a number of us have worked on together. The chair's going to move, and I fully support that direction, which is to send back recommendations 4 and 5, and to undertake a feasibility study to look at museum and other public uses, and to undertake some consultation, including a charrette and report, and to develop a proposed design process and report back here within a couple of years. I don't think I've ever seen such an immediate reaction to a staff report. That immediate reaction being, we don't share the vision of this real estate consultant, and with all due respect, if you're in the room, and we want this most important, our second most important heritage building in the city, to be a showcase, a place that we can have our own residents and visitors go in and revel in the beauty of the building, and to experience and understand better the history of our city. It is an astounding building. It is not a building that we want to turn into a retail outlet. I think that's pretty clear. That's the message that has come. And I hope that when we come back, we will have a process where the City of Toronto residents really engage in this and build some excitement and momentum around a new vision for this building that we have had literally no access to for the last, how many years? A couple of decades. Since the 70s, yeah. So I look forward to the work ahead, and I am excited about the prospects. If we broaden the divisions and include the public, and I think we will end up with a much better and more acceptable and appropriate use for Old City Hall. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Does anybody have any questions of the mover? And Councillor Davis, sorry, I just had I'd like to make a friendly amendment. We need to delete recommendation number 6 as well for this motion. Okay. Sure. All right. Okay. Councillor McConnell? Yes. Did you want to speak?
Yes, please.
Councillor Ford, did I?
Yeah, go ahead. Oh, okay. So thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I think there's a building of consensus around the table, and it's always wonderful when that begins to happen. And I agree with Councillor Davis that, in fact, you know, this report kind of gave us a wake-up call that really we have to do something with this iconic building, and it cannot be just a replica of what happens in the Eaton Centre or whatever. It is really, it stands, to me, Old City Hall stands as a reminder of days gone by, of our past. And, you know, cities are only as good as honoring their past. If they need a future, they have to be able to tell their story. They have to know from where they have come. And just last week, we discovered the remnants of one of our first city halls. And we know that we've found our remnants of our first Parliament site, and we're busy trying to tell that story. And we know that the second city hall was in the St. Lawrence South Market. So, you know, there's a lot, and we will try and light that up in a way in which people can see, because you can actually see the outline of the old City Hall. But I also remember one Christmas time where we had an art installation. I don't know if any of you saw it. That was on the building itself, and it was the most amazing and transforming kind of piece. This is also not just a center for democracy for Toronto, but it's also a center of culture. And so I think there's some ancillary uses and complementary uses. We have the heritage of all of the legacy cities that we could show off. We've heard from our speaker about her city of York and what they would have to offer. There's a lot of stuff out there. We have an amazing art collection, an amazing archival collection. And where better to put it than geographically and spiritually at the center of the city. It will be a draw for us to tell our story. It will be a magnet also for tourism. And so I want us to really think those things through. If we have ancillary uses, I hope that they're, sort of restaurants and gift shops and those sorts of things. And I want to be able, once again, to open the front doors of one of our great city halls and one of our great heritage buildings and say to Torontonians, this is yours. Because at the end of the day, we have been able to make some money to manage to think about what we will do with it eventually. We're moving our courts out, provincial courts, traffic courts, they're going into our new building at the North Market. And now we have an opportunity to get rid of the other thing that closes off that building, which really is the criminal courts. I actually think it's quite criminal that that's the use that we have had. Someone told me, one of my constituents, that they went in to take a photograph because they take photographs of iconic buildings in our city, and they wanted to take a photograph of that great stained glass window that many of us who go to Remembrance Day get a chance to look at just for one day a year. And he was, his camera was confiscated. He finally got it back. I mean, it was a big to-do. And that seems really a shame to me in one of our most public and most historical buildings. So we've got very little of it left in Toronto, and I think it is time for council to really go down a path of figuring out how to animate that space and then how to pay for that space. And I think we've got the tools to be able to do it, and we don't have to actually begin on that until sometime after 2021, but we do need to make the decision that we are going to go down this road. This road was started by Kyle Ray, actually, and and then it went back to previous Metro councils and to city councils. It is of importance to everyone. So I very much support this recommendation. I think we've all had our little fingerprints on it, and I think it's a very good way to move forward. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor McConnell. Councillor Ford, to speak.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a really unique building that we're dealing with, and a number of possibilities come to my head. The museum, I think we all like a museum. Where that museum would be located, what type of building it would be in, a lot of variables for the museum. Even if we did have a museum, I'm just thinking out loud here, at City Hall, at Old City Hall, it would only take up, I think, not even a quarter of the space. Now, what are we going to do with the rest? I was just thinking a nice hotel, like compare like Chateau Laurier, like an old historic hotel with a museum, maybe with a fancy restaurant, because you've got all this open space too that we could make a lot of money on. I think we should keep our options open, and if someone comes in and gives us the right price and says, well, run your museum, all right, and build a hotel, and we get a piece of pie out of that, you know what, I'm a businessman, I'm looking to make money, and I think this would be a building that we can make money on. And I think the private sector should be well aware of what's going on, and they're the ones that could come up with the options and take it from there. So, but there is a lot of historical value to this building. We all understand that. And it'd be I'm not going to say it's impossible. It'd be very difficult for someone to come in and buy it because there are so many heritage aspects to it. But museum, you're going to have to do a lot of work inside for a museum, and then what do we do with the rest of the space? That's the hard part. The museum is almost the easy part. Just looking, the hotel and a fancy high-end restaurant's just something that's jumping out at me right now, but there must be other uses, so I'll move that. I'm not going to move that motion now, Mr. Chair. I'll wait till council, and I'm going to sit on it and think about it. I'm going to talk to some other people and see what they, because it might be different for people, out in Scarborough, North York, in Etobicoke than the people downtown that see it every day. Some of my constituents might not get down maybe once or twice a year, right? So it's different, but it is a beautiful building, and we have to do something important and wise, but I think we should try to make some money on this building too. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Ford. Other speakers? Councillor Nunziata?
Yes, thank you. I will be supporting, is it Councillor McConnell's motion, Councillor Davis's motion, Councillor Ainsley's motion? Okay, motion.
The
Collective motion. And thank you to Councillor Matlow for your comments and letter they gave us. It's not just all about money. It's important that we preserve our heritage. And, Old City Hall, years ago when we did amalgamate and we were leaving Metro Hall to come to City Hall, it was suggested we go to Old City Hall because it would have been appropriate. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. And but I like the idea that we're going to go up for public consultation, staff to come back and looking at Toronto Museum, not only the downtown, for the other 6 municipalities, 5 municipalities, to bring whatever they have, because I do know in York that we had a very active museum for years, and we even had a museum board, and with thousands of items that are in the museum. And for years, I was trying to get a new location for them, but unfortunately that didn't happen. So it's just locked. It's just locked, and nobody goes in. And it would be, I think, if we can get all the 4 municipalities, bring them all together into one museum, and look at the history and all the different mayors, former mayors, nice picture of the former mayors.
We'll have the Francis room, and we'll have
I know in the
Barbara room.
in the City of York council chambers, we have the whole council. I don't know how many members have been there. The whole wall, all for 100 former mayors on the wall. And I think that there are opportunities. I mean, for public use, if we can bring everything together. Of course, the building itself for a museum, it would be too big just for the museum. But if we can look at other partners and look at other possibilities of bringing everybody together, I definitely do not support just turning into a retail mall or selling or any of that. I think that we should do what we can to preserve it. And actually, in the late 60s, early 70s, that's where I got my divorce. So, I don't want the building.
That was iconic.
Yeah. So, yeah, that was very historic to me.
Okay, I think that is everybody. So I have 2 motions to move. The first one that I think everybody's had some input on. The recommendation 4, 5, and 6 be deleted and replaced with the following. Prior to discussion with future potential tenants and or occupants of Old City Hall, City Council direct the Chief Corporate Officer in consultation with the Economic Development, Culture, Heritage Toronto, and Heritage Preservation Services to undertake a feasibility study for museums and complementary ancillary public uses, undertake a public consultation process, including a charrette, to document feedback, potential public uses for Old City Hall, including a museum, develop a proposed design process, and report back to the Government Management Committee within 2 years on the results of that process. And then the other one I want to move, I buried somewhere. That the rental rate in the major terms and conditions for the lease extension outlined in Appendix A be amended from $41 per square foot of rentable area to $45 per square foot rental area. I'm not going to echo a lot of the comments made by my colleagues here because I agree with them. The one thing I do want to say to begin with about doing this is, there was a quote, "This building opened on September 18th, 1899. And the mayor at the time, John Shaw, he says, "Great buildings symbolize a people of deeds and aspirations. It's been said that whenever a nation has a conscience and a mind, it recorded the evidence of its being in the highest products of the greatest of all arts." And I think that's very appropriate when you talk about this building. I remember 10 years ago, I walked down Bay Street every day to get the GO train. When I first worked here, the outside of that building was in horrible shape. The roof had gone green from over 100 years of oxidization, I think they call it. And you look at it now, it's been fully restored on the exterior. I'm in on the inside of the building, not so great. Needs a lot of work. I've been up in the tower. It's a beautiful view of the downtown core from that tower. When I walk across Nathan Phillips Square now on a daily basis, before we had the Toronto sign out there, tourists every day, all day long, if you walk across that square, they use the Old City Hall as a backdrop for their pictures on Nathan Phillips Square on the other side of the pond. Just looking, they're coming from all over the world. They don't even understand the history of that building, that it might be necessarily Old City Hall as we call it. They just see it as a beautiful building. It's a wonderful backdrop. They don't always see it in the countries or the cities that they come from. When we look at I'm a historian or a historical junkie. Our Toronto archives, if you go up to the archives, it's all material in there. The shelving units are almost 5 stories high. You can go into one of the bay windows and see the power jack that they use to get the boxes of material out of the stacks when they need it. But we have 250 years of history that is not very well displayed. We don't have space for it. You can go into a number of our buildings, whether it's Fort York, Mackenzie House, out to Thompson Park in Scarborough. We have a lot of artifacts and memorabilia about our history. They can't be displayed. They're not getting displayed in the AGO. They're not being displayed in the ROM. I think we really need to look at an appropriate museum. On the second part, if you look in the report, one of the things that came out, and I kind of had questions when I was reading it over, was the rental space that we're charging the province. For prime real estate, Queen and Bay, $40 a square foot. We were going to look at raising it to $41 a square foot, which even in the report it says it goes backwards from what we're charging them now. I appreciate what staff are doing. They have to negotiate with the province, but I think that for having prime real estate for the next 5 years at Queen and Bay, $41, they should be able to pay a little more. They've already, we offered a 5-year lease. They wanted 7 years, so they want this space. We want it. I think if they're gonna, they should be paying prime dollars for this space. So that's the motion that I'm moving as well. Councillor Ford, your question?
Yeah, I guess we're going to agree to disagree, Mr. Chair. My question is, I find $41 a square foot. That's bringing in $9.7 million. That's a lot. I'm just worried that if these guys say no to us, right? Queens province at 45, which I'm pretty sure they're going to, then they'll go back down to 41. Like, I'm just wondering where you're coming with up your 45, because there's a lot of empty retail space in the city of Toronto.
Well, there's not a lot of empty retail space in the downtown core, for starters. I've seen the stats on that. Our staff earlier made a comment that the province You know, they're looking at $20 a square foot. You know, for prime retail space, prime space at Queen and Bay, office space, you know, it's not office space, it's court space.
Right.
Right? It's our old city hall. It's right in the middle of the downtown core. I certainly don't want to support a mall. One of the busiest malls in North America, in Canada, is right next door, right? I think
I don't
that,
disagree, it's just,
right?
again,
If you look at the lease, we were charging them for $40. I think any person, I know if I go out into my ward, just about anywhere in this city, if I say, you know what, Old City Hall, we're renting it to the province for $40 a square foot, and they want 41, we're offering them 41. Most people would say, really? You're jacking up their rent $1 a square foot? Like, come on, councillor, be realistic. That's what they would say to me, and that's why I'm moving this.
okay, well, all right.
Question.
Councillor Grimes?
Can you tell me where the 45 came from? Like, where's that number? And can we maybe ask staff what $45 means to 41 in dollar value?
So when I was doing my math over the weekend and was looking, you know, $40 a square foot, if you raise it even by the cost of inflation, it works out, 1.3% is $40.52. So
No, but what, from 41 to 45, what's that mean in dollars to the province?
Through you, Mr. Chair, there's 165, about 165,000 square feet rentable, so every dollar is 165,000. But
Does staff, you know, does staff support this? And
it's not a staff decision.
Go up 4.
okay.
We direct staff what to do.
You're only six, that's over 600.
Okay? Others? Okay.
That's an additional 660,000 a year.
Okay.
the rentable area is, it's actually 163,000 and change. That's right, I'm just
It's
saying the
approximately
rentable
an
to the province.
additional 600 and change.
Okay, I'll speak then, very briefly.
Okay, so we have motions.
No, I'll speak very briefly, if I can.
I was the last speaker.
Well, I didn't see this until you put it up here.
You can ask questions, but you can't speak.
Why can't I speak?
I asked for, see, I was the last speaker.
Oh, I didn't see this, well, now I'd like to speak to this.
You can't speak to it. You can ask
Did
questions.
already. Okay, thanks.
But he can speak to it. He didn't speak before.
Mr. Chair, can I move a motion to
Yeah.
allow Councillor Grimes to
He
speak?
could speak.
Yeah, he actually,
Sure.
he
Okay.
can actually.
Is that all right? Hey, we vote on it?
I asked for speakers.
No,
I know, if you want to
I
vote
saw
against
this.
it, I just move a motion, let him speak for 5 minutes.
Mr. All fairness, Mr. Chairman, you
Okay,
moved
can
your
I
motion at the
just-
beginning of
hold
the
on,
meeting, and I
hold on.
didn't see this motion.
Hold on, I have a question to the mover of the motion before you speak, Councillor Grimes. Is that okay? No, you're, Janet, you're the chair. Okay, okay, so
Hold on, just on a...
big moment
hold on,
here.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
I'm just
I
asking,
moved the motion first, that should come first, and then they'll deal with theirs. I don't know why...
Excuse, are you passing the chair to me?
So according to the rules, so I asked everybody in the committee if they wanted to speak. I spoke last.
Right.
I moved a motion.
Right.
You asked me questions on my motion. Councillor Grimes asked me questions. Councillor Councillor Nunziata now has decided to ask me a question on my motion.
Okay, all right.
Which I'm answering, and Councillor Davis has the chair.
All right.
right, okay, so,
So there is a question of,
your motion is to ask staff to go back to the province and renegotiate from 41 to 45,
Yes.
and then come back to committee. They say no, then they have to
No, I
come back
would-
to committee.
No.
I mean, are there any options, like, what are the options if they say no? Well, that was my question. I mean,
is there, do you have an,
They would have to leave.
you want to answer?
I don't know.
They would have to leave, I guess.
Okay. So that's your final question. Any other questions of the mover? Seeing none. Councillor Grimes to speak.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. I'm not going to be supporting this. This is a very slippery slope. You know, I don't know where that 45 came from, pulled out of thin air, could have made it 48, but $600,000, I don't think this is good policy. We, you know, negotiating leases, we got Mr. Casali over there. We pay, I'm sure, pretty good dollars too, probably $1 an hour. But he knows what he's doing, I think, in my mind, and I don't think we should be negotiating leases. And good questioning by Councilor Nunziata, what happens if they come back? There's a pushback. There's no answer to that, so I will not be supporting this, but I will be supporting all the other motions. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, I understand that, excuse me, that Councillor Ainsley has suggested an amendment. He's going to amend his motion to up to 45. And this recommendation authorizes our chief corporate officer to go away and do it, and that's still in the report. So I presume that they will use their delegated authority to get the best deal up to $45. So with that clarity and that amendment, I'll hand the chair back to Councillor Ainsley.
Okay, all right, so our first motion. One on the screen, all in favor?
Yeah.
All in favor? McConnell, Nunziata, Davis, Ainsley. It's unanimous. Councillor Matlow, you can't vote. Thank you for coming.
Supportive gesture.
That motion passes unanimously. The second motion, all in favor?
Recorded vote.
McConnell, Nunziata, Davis, Ainsley, opposed, Grimes, and Ford. And that passes. Item is amended. Item is amended. All in favor? And that's unanimous. Carries. Okay, thank you, everyone. Next, so we go back to item number 1, GM 7.1, outstanding payment in lieu of taxes and property taxes, amounts for federal, provincial, municipal properties. Councillor Davis, you held it?
Good. I guess I'm still struggling to understand. I know we settled CBC, we settled Port Authority, we settled a couple of other outstanding PILTs, but there still remain, these still remain, these large ones, and in particular, I think the largest relate to national defense. Why is it that national defense, these outstanding PILTs, are not being paid? And that have been in dispute for so long.
Through the chair, for the most part, these are a number of properties over a number of years that were minor disputes as they went, that are now very old. The larger amounts, we do have a new process to deal with.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand your answer. So there were specifically, which are the largest outstanding PILTs? Are they not the ones related to national defense and Shepherd and?
No, they are not.
Okay, which? No, CBC has been settled.
If we refer to attachment 1,
Yes?
Public Works Canada is the largest amount.
Okay, so that's for Downsview, is that correct?
No, this does not include Downsview. Downsview
So what is it
was
for
done
then?
under separate authority. For Public Works, we have a list of the properties. I mean, it's a number of different properties on Keel Street, Lake Shore, Fleet Street. There are a number of different properties. And
So are these mostly because tenants did not pay, or?
no, these
I
are
don't
not tenants. These are mostly because the government had.
It's just, Mr. Chair, it's just so much noise.
These are mostly as a result of capping and clawbacks that the government applied that were not in our original assessment to them.
What does that mean?
It's similar to commercial buildings. The
Oh,
government.
capping. I thought you said gapping.
No,
Capping and
capping and
clawbacks.
clawbacks.
So most of it related to capping and clawback disputes.
Correct, and those would be applicable to commercial buildings. We didn't have the ability in our system in the past to reflect those as reductions.
So I understand that at amalgamation as well, there were a whole bunch of records that weren't properly kept, and that we have no evidence to support our position on a number of these.
Correct, Councillor Davis. Through you, Mr. Chair, when the tax system was being developed, we inherited records from pre-amalgamation municipalities that indicated PILT, payment in lieu of tax amounts, outstanding. The records were not entered into our system. The billings were done manually, offline, so there was no record of the billing that was created. There was no record of amounts that may have been paid. In fact, there was no record of who was issued the PILT billings. These are simply amounts that when the tax billing system was created, were entered in with very little documentation. It is clear we cannot reconcile those amounts because we don't know who was billed or who paid.
So another cost of amalgamation. Wow, that's, so at the end, so when do you decide that that's it? We're asking to give you the delegated authority, which is another part of this report, to decide when you're going to write off the PILT disputes. So when do you decide that it is simply not payable? Maybe that's...
And through the chair, we will be doing this on an annual basis. It will be in consultation with legal, and we will report everything back.
But what criteria, what makes you, there must be some, at some point you say, we can't win this. What kinds of things?
Well, it will allow us to make adjustments for errors in the roll which were not included in here, so that out of an abundance of caution, this report includes everything that's been billed that hasn't been collected, regardless of whether it was billed properly or not. And because there are adjustments to the roll and such, those, on a go-forward basis, we will adjust and report back on an annual basis. And those where we go to a dispute advisory panel, where we go to the assessment appeals, we will report all of those.
I have not understood.
That's,
I don't understand that answer either.
She'd like it in lay lady terms.
No, so I understand, okay, so many of these outstanding disputes, we don't have correct records for, and so we are writing them off. Presumably, we've corrected this problem of records. We now have it included in our tax system, so that problem is finished,
yes.
right? So now we are, though, you also say that you've embedded in here all of the proposed write-offs for all reasons. So what are the other reasons other than poor records? I want to know if why the federal government, we're letting them off the hook. Are there some areas where they're just simply saying no, and we believe and have been asserting our position up until now that they owe it? Are you saying we are going to take some of these off to dispute, or we're writing them all off? These are all write-offs at this point.
These
this
are
report.
old write-offs. In the future, we will exhaust all avenues before we bring it forward, but we will be
So
bringing it forward on a more timely basis.
Well, that's the part that's very concerning. Anyway, so this is $34 million worth of write-offs. How much is still in dispute on PILTs with the federal government? Or is this it?
This is not it. We've excluded the West Don lands, and I don't know whether there are any other.
I thought that was provincial.
The PILTs that remain outstanding, the major PILTs are the Toronto Port Authority, which is already in settlement based
Yes.
on council's previous instructions.
Yes.
the CBC property, for which authority already exists to settle those ones.
Yes?
And the West Donlands properties, which are a number of properties in the Canary District.
Okay.
The Athletes Village that are under active assessment appeals. So that's what's been.
There aren't a bunch of other federal buildings or provincial in the city right now that have outstanding PILTs that we are still in dispute.
No, what we're recommending, what's included in this report are all federal, provincial, municipal payments in lieu where the amounts are outstanding, but we have had a determination that these amounts are not likely to be collected. And so this is the balance.
Because,
Last
why?
question, Councillor.
I just have one other after this. Because, why? Why are we not going to be able to collect it?
Because the,
Sorry, Councillor, you asked that question already.
No, these ones that are, either because of, is those because of bad records?
a request has been made to the order of government that is responsible to pay the payment in lieu. They have refused to pay. They've used their own method of calculation or their own determination of value. They said, this is the amount that we're paying you for this billing. We are left with a receivable on the
I just want to know, how much do we believe, putting aside those we're settling, those that had bad records and
Right.
are indefensible, how much do we believe the federal government still should have paid us,
Sorry,
based on our records?
sorry, Councillor.
Could I please get an
Yeah.
answer to that?
Yeah, sorry, Councillor Davis, just as a matter of clarification, so you're asking questions about matters that are outside of this report. So this report before us is about PILTs that staff cannot recover and want to write off.
And I want to understand, of those that, of the monies that can't be recovered, why? Some of them are for bad records that are our fault. Some, the federal government has simply refused. So I want to understand how much the government of Canada has simply refused.
It's in the report.
It's in the report.
It's the 34 million. They've simply refused. And we, even though we think we had good cases on those.
We don't have good cases. That's why this report's here, Councillor.
There's nothing we can do about this.
There are some where we did not have good records. So you're saying we simply can't defend any of the 34 million?
Councillor, you've asked the same question 3 different ways, and he's answered it
Yes.
the same as the information that's in the report.
Because of the nature of payments in lieu, they are voluntary payments made by the federal and provincial governments. When we ask for payment, if they say this is all you are receiving, this is our payment in full, we cannot force them to pay additional amounts that are our billings. We take the payments that are rendered. That's why we have these outstanding balances. That's what we're recommending. This report is recommending allow us to remove the older outstanding balances where we know we will not collect them.
And you're changing the
Okay,
process.
sorry, Councillor, you're over your 5 minutes by a lot. Okay, are there other questions on this item? No. Speakers on this item? Councillor Davis, did you want, sorry.
I'll just move the recommendation.
Okay, Councillor Davis, you held it. Did you want to speak?
Yeah, I mean, I know that we've had these disputes with the federal government going back to amalgamation. But I didn't know that it's $34 million of flat-out refusal to pay. And errors. Well, I'm trying to understand errors versus flat-out refusal to pay.
Okay, Councillor.
And I'm going to, after this, get clarification. And I really do want
Councillor
to understand, I'm
Davis.
speaking to
Yes,
the
Just as a
motion.
point of order,
Speaking to the motion,
point of order.
yes. You're the chair.
On page 7, the chart breaks it all down.
I have read it.
Okay.
Does not talk about errors versus refusal. So I want to understand, too, why it is we want to delegate authority so that staff can then make the final determination and then just report out to us, as opposed to reporting to us with recommendations to write them off. I really don't understand why you're seeking that authority. It seems to me that for over 10 years, 15 years, we've allowed these things to build up, and maybe we should be taking a different approach with the federal government. Maybe we should be posting these. Maybe we should be making it very clear and publicizing these outstanding PILTs in a way that shames the federal government or stacks up what they owe us every time we are looking at our budget, because I think it's outrageous that they have not paid the PILTs. So anyway, that's all I'll say on that, and I will call you to get more information.
Okay, thank you. Other speakers on this? Councillor Davis moving the recommendations. Sorry, Councillor Nunziata, all in favor? Carried. Number 2, yeah, largest property debtors with tax arrears greater than 500,000. Councillor McConnell held it. Councillor Ford, we're going to move down to yours. Number 3, option to provide utility bills on a monthly billing cycle.
Oh, weren't we going to go 2? Weren't we do 500? Oh. Okay.
Councillor McConnell held number 2. Did you have questions of staff on number 2?
Yeah, I do on 2, yeah. Can I start on 2, or are we doing a 3?
Sorry, 3. Do you have questions of staff, Councillor Ford, on 3?
Yeah, just this monthly billing cycle. You're saying it must be...
We're on 3.
Yeah,
Yep.
3, yeah. A one-year pilot project that's allowed monthly billings for low-volume residential must be electronic e-bills and pre-authorized debits. Most people are, I shouldn't use the word with the times, but are paying their bills online and stuff. But believe it or not, there's still a lot of people, especially seniors, that want to go to the bank and get that personal touch. I see it every day. So I'm just wondering, how is this going to force seniors to pay electronically when they've never done this before in their life, or am I missing something?
No, through the chair, this is a pilot to see whether monthly billings are wanted by residents, so that seniors, if they wish to continue to get a bill in the mail and pay by check, they will still be able to do that. This is just to see what demand there is for monthly billing and in the most cost-efficient way.
What percentage, let's just take any bills, whatever bills, let's say a water bill. How many people pay online, and how many people still write out checks and mail it back to the city? Or how many people come to the city and pay? Do you have those numbers?
Through the chair, 70% pay online.
70?
70.
And the other 30 what? Just go to the bank or
About
come down here?
5% come to the counter, others will mail in checks.
So you're trying to get everybody, obviously, if possible, to go online. It obviously saves money, and it's...
Certainly, it would be nice to have one system, but we understand that efficiency isn't our overriding requirement here.
So again, sorry, where is this pilot project being done? Is it going to be like right across the whole city for 1 month? For which bills?
This will be across the city with anyone who wishes to have a monthly bill.
Maybe if I can help, so through you, Mr. Chair, we right now bill 3 times a year.
Yeah.
So the bill gets big.
Yeah.
What we want to do is, okay, can we increase the frequency to make it easier for people to pay? But when you do that, you increase your billing and collection costs. You got to mail
right.
and whatever.
Gonna
So
cost
that's
more.
why we're saying is if you want to take advantage of a smaller bill and have bills more often, to do that efficiently, we want to do it electronically.
But it's going to cost us more if we went that way. It's more work.
Well, that's why we're going to run a pilot. If you actually require us to go and mail monthly bills, then absolutely it's going to cost more money, and we question the value of that. What we're asking here for approvals is to start a pilot where we can do it electronically, because electronic transfers and billing is much cheaper, so we can give a little bit of service without impacting cost. Hence the pilot, so we want to see if we can do that.
So someone who gets it manually, like myself, goes to the bank with all my other bills, I'm not affected. You have to sign up for this? Is this?
Correct, correct. It would be a pilot. We would offer it to people that if they want bills monthly, fine, sign up, but you've got to do it electronically. We will do the bill presentation through e-post, and then you will pay us electronically to cut down administration costs and make things more efficient. And we'll try it out for a year and see how it goes.
No.
Yeah, just on that point, the last comment you made. So actually, if people do sign up on this and the pilot, it would be beneficial to the city because we would get that revenue sooner rather than later. So our, be best for the city if we had that revenue rather than have it just 3 times.
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, it would
In fact,
improve cash flows. There is also a bit more administration cost
Well,
to
there's
do
more
that as well.
administration
So
cost.
that's why we want to run a pilot and see how it goes.
Yeah. So also too, just talking about bills, I know it's not part of this report, but if the federal government, and I know that we're still, it hasn't been finalized yet on when it comes to Canada Post, right? Delivery. So how is that going to affect actually the city when we do send out these bills? When they're going to cut out the mail delivery? Will that have any impact?
I don't believe that what Canada Post is doing will affect this or how we send bills at this point in time.
Okay, just curious, yeah, because they wouldn't be receiving these, the bills as often.
People will still receive the same number of bills. If you don't have door-to-door delivery, you have to go to where the bill is.
Okay, I was just questioning, yeah, it's okay, thanks.
Okay, any other speakers? Oh, okay, I'm just going to add a 4th recommendation that staff report back to the Government Management Committee at the end of the 1-year pilot project on costs and resources that were utilized. Because if you dig into the report, it says any additional costs or resources necessary associated with monthly billings will be reported to council through the regular budget process following evaluation of the 1-year pilot project. I'd like it to come back to this committee for a report. Okay. Councillor Grimes? All okay? All in favor of the amendment? All in favor of the amendment? Report is amended, carried. Now we're going to go back to number 2. Councillor McConnell, you held it.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Largest property tax debtors with tax years greater than $500,000.
So I had some questions on page 3 of the report, if I
Okay.
could, which are the individual properties. And with a view, so the first one is a very mundane question. So in the very first bullet, I'm sorry they're not numbered, but first of all, thank you. That's the first thing. Because this is always, I think, I actually asked for this, I don't know, about 8 years ago or something, and we've been reporting on it ever since, and it is a good snapshot of where we are. So we're $24.5 million in tax arrears at the moment with these big guys. Did you mean in that first bullet October 2015, or did you mean November? Is it coming? Is the report on those first 4 properties, 3 of the first 4 properties? That's not in this. I didn't understand.
Through the chair, that was report number 1.
Okay. Okay, now I understood it. I didn't understand it when I first read it. Okay, got it. Okay, so the second one that I had was, and I think we've got 5 new ones, right, that have been added to that you're actively going after. Isn't that the last bullet? Are there 8? Okay, so there's the 5 at the bottom, and which other new ones? Sorry.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the 8 new ones are the 5 at the bottom and
Yes.
the 3 preceding, 235 Queens Quay West,
Great.
25 Merton, 135 Plunkett Road.
Right, and I wanted you to explain to me the one about Queens Quay West. It was federally owned, it was transferred to the city with the old tax arrears now. How does all of that, we don't get the money from the federal government, how does that work?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that particular property, yes, was owned by the federal government. It was transferred to the city, and the unpaid taxes there are former tenant taxes from the tenant that was there. And that tenant has vacated in 2005, I believe.
So we're still going after that former tenant, is that correct? It's a bit, this has happened to us on several of these federal buildings, where it's the tenant that doesn't pay, and then the federal government doesn't cover it, right?
Correct.
And so I just wondered, like, what's our chances in those circumstances, since we now own the property? I mean, is this one that's just going to be written off? I don't know.
Through you, Mr. Chair, it is likely, because the tenant has been gone for so long, and the
Yes.
federal government has been requested to pay the former tenant taxes. If they don't pay the former tenant taxes, it is very likely that the taxes there will be the subject of a write-off request in future.
Yes, okay. And then on the, about half of the money, 10.5 million, are the 4 properties that are kind of midway down, and you're saying that we put them up for the sale. 2 had no takers, and the other 2 are coming back in the report in November. Is that right?
There is a further tax sale where properties that have not sold previously, a number of the properties that you see on this list are scheduled to appear in the November sale of land for tax arrears. So we will try it again to
Okay.
sell these properties to recover the taxes that are owing.
Great.
Those include the ones on Spadina Avenue, are all in the November tax sale.
Yes.
Torrey York Drive, Bryden Drive, all will be included in the November sale of land for tax arrears.
Right, okay. And the other ones are really, as I understand it, sort of the commercial condominiums, and that's just trying to sort out the apportionment, isn't it? Is that what it is?
Again, through you, Mr. Chair, the commercial condominiums at 222 Spadina
Yeah,
are problem properties where there are many tax arrears, and we've tried unsuccessfully to sell those in the past.
okay,
I think there's only one property where we're looking to recover the outstanding taxes through the apportionment of taxes. That's one of the recent ones added to the list.
oh, okay, yes, okay. So thank you very much, and thanks for this. It's very, I think it's very helpful, sort of for the shame and blame, which I think is at some point the only way in which we manage to get the federal government and some of these landlords who don't pay their debts to come forward. So it's great to have their properties in front of us and in front of the public. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Counselor. Other questions of staff? Nope. Okay, all right. I had 2 questions. Mr. Brandon, I just wanted to ask, in the issues background, on page 2, it says, once taxes are 3 years or more in arrears, the municipality may register a tax arrears certificate on title to the property. The word may caught my eye. Do we automatically do this every 3, when this takes place, or is it a matter of opinion? Like, do we automatically say, okay, this is 3 years in arrears, boom, we're registering a tax certificate? Or are we saying, let's keep negotiating? Because some of the properties in the appendix go back, like 22 Spadina, go back to 2006.
No, in fact, Mr. Chair, we follow council-approved procedures to collect taxes. That includes proceeding to the tax sale process as soon as we are able. A lot of these properties that have older arrears have been through the tax sale property or have had a tax arrears certificate registered. We do, in fact, as a matter of course, register after there are 3 years of tax arrears. The registration process begins, and we do undertake to register the tax arrears certificate on title.
Okay.
So it's not a may, and it's not a.
It's
at
a
that
done.
point, yes, at that point, we do it automatically.
Okay, and I also wanted to ask, so this report looks at 500,000. Is there, what would the next threshold be? Like if I said, 400,000, how many, do you know how many properties? Like if we dumbed it down to 400,000, does it like go shoot right up to 100 properties, 200 properties?
I wouldn't
Are
know
we
off
gonna
the
be
top of
shocked?
I wouldn't know off the top of my head, but in general, the city's tax collection process work well. 97% of the taxes that are billed in a year are collected within that year. These are.
How much?
97%.
The CFO is bragging as well, so I was having trouble hearing. 97% of our taxes are collected annually.
Yes, the taxes are collected in the year that they are billed, so there's only 3% of outstanding taxes. And the processes that we have in place with the bailiff, with the tax sale process, we have a very good record of collecting even these taxes. These are problem properties for the most part, where there is either an absentee owner, contamination issues, or long-standing problems.
So I would say that's an excellent rate of collection in year. 97% of the taxes owed we collect in year. Very good. Thank you. Okay. Councillor McConnell, you held us?
Happy to move receipt.
Okay. All in
thanks.
favor of receipt on this item? Carried. And we're on item number 11. Toronto Hydro's agreement with 311 for outage emergencies. Councillor Davis, you held this?
I'm just wondering if we could defer it 1 month until Councillor Fletcher can be here.
Okay, I'm fine with that, and I have a motion to move as well, that along with the deferral, that this item be deferred until November 9th, 2015, and the Director of 311 be requested to discuss with Toronto Hydro and report back on further amendments to the Memorandum of Understanding that will ensure that 311 is made aware of all minor outage emergencies that occur at the ward or within ward scale. Because a minor outage for citywide, not a big deal, but in ward, minor outages can be a huge deal. We don't always get the information back from Toronto Hydro through 311, so I would like that taken into consideration as well. All in favor of the amendment and deferral? Sorry, the deferral. All in favor of the deferral? Carried. And I think that's it. Motion to adjourn. Thank you, everybody. Carried.